Okay, so welcome. My name is Phil Tocco. I'm with Michigan State University Extension, and I am going to talk a little bit about meeting Module 9 requirements for Primus GFS 3.2. This, this particular webinar is being taped on December 17th, 2024. So things that are changed after December 17th, 2024, please review the requirements and respond accordingly. It's really important that you recognize that things will change and that the information I'm presenting does have essentially an expiration date when there's changes within Module 9 or within Primus GFS 3.2. So the goals of this webinar are basically to give you the understanding of the requirements to Module 9 and hopefully give you some examples of records used to meet the requirements and then be able to give you the tools you need to make your own records. I see a few people are popping in. Feel free to unmute and ask questions. For those of you that are here, that's great. So I want interaction, so don't hesitate to speak up. Hi, Dana. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you. I'm doing well, thanks. So, and we're joined by a few people in the audience, and that's a good thing. So again, feel free to ask questions or stop me at any time. So you may be asking why on earth people are making you basically do a bit on pollinators and IPM when we're talking food safety. Increasingly, food safety is more than just food safety. Um, and in some cases, there are mandates by companies to meet certain sustainability requirements. Frito-Lay, as you may be aware, is talking about having sustainably sourced corn and potatoes in their products. So this is a way they can market it. Like consumer buyers are demanding that the people that they buy from are doing certain things and they're voting with their feet. When they vote with their feet, this is not something that is mandated by a law. This is the companies really need to catch up, or if they don't catch up, they're going to lose business. And so a lot of these companies are basically implementing these practices and these audit schemes to help ensure that the people that they buy from are using certain practices. As you guys are probably aware, most people these days don't spray on a schedule. Most people these days are using IPM techniques as a matter of course because it makes financial sense. We don't want to spray any chemicals that we don't have to spray because they're expensive. And as much as that economic reality is well understood within the agricultural community, when it comes to businesses and when it comes to consumers have a very different understanding of pesticides. They they really do believe that farmers are spraying pesticides that they don't need to be spraying and that are essentially out there and polluting the environment. So a lot of what we have to do within the ag community is educate our buyers and educate the consumer as to how things are done for real so that they have a better understanding of what modern agriculture really is about. This is a step in that process. By going through module 9, we're able to better show that yeah, indeed, agriculture doesn't use excessive pesticides. We only use what we need. Never mind the fact that it's cheaper that way, but it's important to make that recognition. As you may also be aware, um, Walmart is also pretty active in sustainability efforts, and they spend a lot of time talking about bees. And that means, and specifically when we dig into some of the information that Walmart has, the Walmart US is committed to source 100% of the fresh produce and floral we sell in our in-store produce department from suppliers that adopt IPM practices as verified by a third party by 2025. So this means Module 9 is going to be a must next year, essentially. And this basically is how they're showing that the people they buy from are using IPM practices is by going through these Primus GFS 3.2 Module 9. So, how do you do this? This is the probably we're going to get into nuts and bolts now about how you actually do this. Um, to begin with, let's go over what the 5 questions of Module 9's IPM practices are within version 3.2. If we were looking up close, the first question is, does the operation have a documented integrated pest management plan? Does the operation have evidence of implementation of IPM practices? Third one, does the operation monitor the effectiveness of non-chemical control methods used? Does the operation assess pesticide risk? And then the last question, are pesticide applications tied to a documented justification? So we're going to talk about how to show or how you can use your records and what you're currently doing to show this stuff and how to use some tools at your disposal to meet some of the needs that are presented here without having to go through basically jumping through like bending over backwards to try and make things work. So the first question, does the operation have a documented integrated pest management plan? This is a piece of paper. And yes, it's a record that you need to have out there. You can do this a couple of different ways. The first thing that you need to do is spell out your key pests. So Colorado potato beetle, flea beetles, aphids, early blight, late blight. These are probably your key pests. My guess is your list is going to be similar to this list here. And really talking a little bit about each of these pests is important to have part of the integrated pest management plan. So when and where did they do damage in your season? How are they what how do you know whether or not you need to worry about these guys? How do you test to make sure that you have enough of a threshold, you meet a threshold for um, using a pesticide? Those are key things that go inside of an IPM plan. Now you can spell this out and work this out in your head and basically put what you use every day on paper that way. Or you can take a shortcut approach that then will help you. But other things that you want to include in the IPM plan are basically the practices used to control key pest. You probably do crop rotation. Not too many people are doing potato after potato. So talking about your crop rotation, talking about your crop scouting, these are things to put in an IPM plan, and making a list of all these pests and the practices you use to control each of them is part of what an IPM plan is about. Now, there are ways to shortcut this. Now, I put a little bit of an IPM plan there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing this and we're going to share another screen so I can show you how to use generative AI, which is maybe a bad word. Um, and we're going to try and show you how to generate an IPM plan quickly or more quickly. So if we're in Google and we go to, this happens to be over my, here we go. If we go to Google and we see this little drop down, the little, it's not a hamburgers, it's the 3 rows of dots. If we go to Gemini and we left click on Gemini, it's going to pull up, um, done. Where it's going to pull up the generative AI for Google. And I can ask Gemini for, can you please, I always use please, generate an IPM plan for commercial potato production in Michigan. So the first thing you're going to notice is we've got it generates the key principles, the goal of it, scouting techniques, record keeping, action thresholds, and it should talk about the key pests if I go down right there. So specific pests and diseases I'm looking for: Colorado potato beetle, flea beetles, early blight, late blight, other pests and diseases, the record keeping, the evaluation and refinement. So I can literally cut and paste this into a Word document and start there. Now, I'm going to caution you that a lot of times it'll spit out stuff that isn't necessarily what you'd want. And I'll show you a second. I did this once and I was like, I had to read through it, and it requires you to read through it, or else, you're gonna miss stuff. Hang on, that's not right. Share again, and I'm gonna share this again. So if I go through and hit this like so, um, it'll give me a basic format that I can then tweak from there. It gives you a starting point, and it's really important, though, if you're using AI, to trust but verify. So what AI does is it goes out and it looks at all of the documentation on the web, and it tries to come to some kind of key piece that to that it thinks you're asking for. In the case of the time that I generated this particular IPM plan, it basically said economic thresholds. I can't find economic thresholds for potato pests. So instead of giving the economic threshold for individual potato pests, I'm going to give the definition. So it provided the economic threshold definition instead of the actual threshold that you would use for each of those pests. So the idea would be you still need to go through, read through it, and figure out whether or not this stuff applies to you and try and provide information specific to your pests. So it won't do everything for you, but it gets you pretty doggone close. So that's a good way to start the process of creating the IPM plan. Is that way you've got a framework set up, you've got all the key information, and then you can go through and add your information to it. So instead of spending 2 hours doing this, you could spend half an hour. You've generated a sort of a framework, and then you have to go through and spend maybe half an hour cleaning it up and making it appropriate to your operation. Ultimately, it has to be tailored to you, because the auditor is going to look at what you've got, and then it's going to judge whether or not the auditor is going to judge whether or not you actually are following your IPM plan, just like it does with a food safety plan. They're going to look at your food safety plan, and they're going to judge whether or not you're actually following what you wrote. So think of this as a template. That's the most important thing. Oh, go ahead, Dana.
Yeah, did you want us to just ask questions on the fly or wait until you're done? I'm happy to do either.
You can ask questions on the fly. Go ahead.
Okay. So I know you haven't gotten through everything yet with all the questions. I heard you say that there are 5 questions,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
Um, does that seem overly simplistic given how intricate and how big sustainability and the talks of sustainability have become over recent years? I mean, I'm even becoming more aware of the specifics that our growers are going through as it relates to social audits. And some of the things that are coming up in social audits for our growers are crazy, weird, out of this world stuff. Like one of our growers was told he needs to put a biofence around his property that would cost millions of dollars to install. I mean, it's just to protect against nuclear warfare. I don't know, but it was absolutely ridiculous. So now we're actually getting into something that, you know, many growers across the country practice on a regular basis, and it comes down to 5 questions. Does that seem a little like there should be
Oh.
more? I don't want there to be more because I understand that growers are already doing a lot. So don't misunderstand. I just am really surprised that it's coming down to 5 questions that are phrased in more of a closed question way. Do you have this? Yes. And I'm sure the auditors are verifying what they have to back up their answer to those questions. It just seems a little simple.
There are entire audit schemes about pollinator protection. And one of the negotiations between large suppliers and buyers, large buyers, at the level of where these audit schemes are created was basically a compromise not to have a separate audit around pollinator protection and IPM, but to simply do Module 9 in Primus 3.2. The difference in cost to growers in verification, we're talking about an extra day and an extra several $1,000s to pay that auditor. So that was a compromise on the part of the supplier or on the part of the buyers. After suppliers basically said, we will help you meet your social responsibility needs and we will help you verify your social responsibility needs, but you have to give a little bit because we can't, if you're not going to pay us any more money for our product, we need to do something here. So, does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah. I appreciate the background and
Yeah.
context.
No problem. And I know some of the people that were part of that conversation, and I know it was hard to make that because a lot of large suppliers want what they want, and that's all that they want. And we're getting to a point now where it's I hate to call it ridiculous, but the consumer is driving the bus on this. And this is not about laws, this is about consumer preference. And um yeah, that's and I'm going to get off the soapbox because I'm getting close to where I feel like I'm uncomfortable. So, at any rate, the second question then is, does the operation have evidence of implementation of IPM practices? So this comes down to, do you have a record of the practices you use to control pests, key pests? So if you've got a cropping system plan, that's part of it. If you've got scouting records, that's part of it. If you have spray records, which I'm pretty sure you do with some of the RUPs, restricted use pesticides, you're going to have to put, or you're going to want to add that to the mix. And then if you maintain pollinator habitat or you are part of a CRP program, having conservation reserve program information with this is really part of IPM in the sense that if you have undisturbed areas or areas that you minimally disturb, that's going to be a great reservoir and refugia for a lot of these beneficial insects. So having that stuff in this plan makes a lot of sense. Pardon me. So then the third question, does the operation monitor the effectiveness of non-chemical control methods used? Do you have a scouting program in place? If you do, you want to make sure that those scouting records are available. This is really going to show that you're proactively not applying pesticides. Now I'm starting to get coughing. Sorry. Um, those scouting records are really going to help bolster whether or not bolster that you do this. And then how often, then this is something that may take a little bit of work, but how often is spraying not needed when the crops are scouted? That again is going to show that effectiveness of non-chemical control methods. My guess is that you have a crop scout in your fields more regularly than you need spraying for. Different pests, if they're not in occurrence, you've got a scout out there saying, yep, you don't need to worry about this yet, and you're going to skip a spray. So those are key things to have at the ready as part of your plan. Now, the last one is, does the operation assess pests, or the third or fourth one, does the operation assess pesticide risk? this is kind of important, and it's one of those things that needs to be, it's going to take a little time. You need to have a list of the pesticides you use with EPA reg numbers, FRAC or IRAC codes, and then have an understanding of what risks they posed. Understand that the majority of these buyers are concerned with bee sensitivity. So they're really looking at, they want to know about how sensitive some or how detrimental some of these chemicals are to bees. So one of the ways that I've helped growers, particularly potato growers, is making a table with this information and color coding it. Now you can notice there's a QR code at the bottom right hand corner. That goes to the UC Davis bee precaution pesticide ratings. This is the link, the same, so that QR code goes to that link. And if you want a way to get there really quick, you can open up your camera function on your iPhone or your Android device. Take a picture of this page, and if you open the picture, you can actually click on the link in the picture. It will automatically generate a link within the picture. So if you don't do QR codes, which is what we did on the last one to get to this page, the last slide to get to this page, you can literally click on the link in the picture and it will go to this website. This is a way to enter the common name or the trade name of any chemical that you use, and it will pull up whether it's a green, a yellow, or a red pesticide. Putting all this together, we can, and this is one that was done for a potato grower. So looking at all of the different chemicals, the trade names that potato grower uses, the EPA reg numbers, then the common name of those particular chemicals, and any specifics according to that website and other websites. And then I had on under the trade name, I had every one of those pesticides colored according to their risk profile for pollinators. So this gives it at a glance. And we found that auditors really do like this and really find it to be helpful because it shows at a glance which ones you need to worry about. And it's a good way to have all that information in one place. I will say that if there are specifics, you want to probably keep in mind those specifics and try to work with those specifics so that you don't in inadvertently have a major pollinator sort of kill. So then the fourth question, are pesticide applications tied to a documented justification? In Michigan, this is a little more challenging. Out in California, the rules for pesticide applications, you basically have to have a prescription in order to have a pesticide application. And since California drives the bus with respect to um, fresh produce production, this is part of a lot of audit schemes. So having that documented justification, we don't do that in Michigan, but if you've applied pesticides in response to a scouting report, that is a documented justification. You get a crop scout saying you've got a ton of late blight starting up and you're getting out there with the Ridamil, that's that is a justification. So gathering those records in this section is really important. It's important also to spell out what the action thresholds you use are. So if your crop scout has action thresholds for your key pests, reaching out to that crop scout to get that information. This is not going to be a 5 minute process. All of these steps are not going to be a 5 minute process, but they're certainly they shouldn't take all day, which is really the key, is to keep these as short as possible with respect to putting this together. And that was the last question. So here's my contact information. And if anyone wants to reach out to me, whether you're a potato grower in Michigan or in a potato grower in Wisconsin or anywhere, please don't hesitate to reach out to me via email, my office number, or my cell number. I do pick up. I'm not as apt to pick up a crazy cell phone number that calls me. So email is probably the most reliable way to get a hold of me. And so you can see that by working a little bit on this, an hour, maybe two total, you can come up with meeting the record keeping requirements and all the paperwork requirements in advance of your audit. Any other questions, Dana?
I don't think so. Not
Okay.
right now. If any come up though, I'll definitely reach out.
So I'm curious, Dana, you're a consultant?
No, actually, I'm the director of promotions at the Wisconsin Potato and Vegetable Growers Association.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Got you. So neat. So yeah, I'm flexible. I know no borders. So if anyone in Wisconsin wants to reach out, I'm more than happy to help with that.
Yeah,
Um,
no, certainly we'll pass that
yeah.
along. Would it be a problem? There's a couple of people that came to mind as you were talking. Would it be a problem to share your presentation with them?
I actually think Zeke's going to put this on the website.
Yeah, hi Dana. Yeah, I'm gonna put this on our YouTube channel, and then I can share the link with you.
Yeah, if you don't mind sharing the link, I would appreciate that. I've
Absolutely.
heard rumblings of Module 9, of course. I organize the food safety training for our growers every year. I until now hadn't really been privy to the specifics, nor the background behind it. So I really appreciate the info.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm finding as much as I'm a produce safety educator, a lot of what I have to do now is so produce safety adjacent. Like, let's talk about pollinators. How are we going to meet the record requirements on this one? Or let's talk about social justice, which is something I'm still trying to wrap my arms around. So,
Mhm. For sure.
so cool. That's it, Zeke. Short and sweet, half an hour.
Okay, sounds good. I will go ahead and stop recording.
Yeah, cool.